Good evening, and welcome to the Free Speech America Gala, virtual edition. We're glad you could join us. Tonight's gala theme, A Voice for Everyone, reflects the importance of free speech and access to communication technologies for all Americans, and it recognizes the efforts of our distinguished awardees to further those goals. While we're not physically together tonight, we are united in the same mission. We're here to recognize the values of the Media Institute, to celebrate freedom of speech, to promote a competitive media environment, and to advance excellence in journalism, fundamental values that serve all Americans. And we're also here to celebrate Free Speech Week, which will take place next week. The Media Institute created Free Speech Week 15 years ago as the perfect way to recognize our constitutional guarantees of free speech and a free press. This annual event celebrates these precious freedoms with no partisan, political, or ideological agenda. Free speech is the language of America. The Media Institute is grateful to our gala sponsors who made tonight's virtual festivities possible: Beasley Media Group, Comcast NBC Universal, LG Electronics USA, NCTA, the Internet and Television Association, Verizon, America's Public Television Stations, the Advanced Television Systems Committee, Charter Communications, Corporation for Public Broadcasting, Covington and Burling, LLP, CTIA, Discovery Communications, iHeartMedia, Interactive Advertising Bureau, Latham Watkins, Lerman Center, PLLC, National Association of Broadcasters, News Media Alliance, Pearl TV, Sinclair Broadcast Group, Tegna, T-Mobile, Viacom CBS Inc., Wiley Rhine LLP, and Wilkinson Barker Nauer. Thanks as well to the National Association of Broadcasters for opening their new doors as a recording location for tonight's event. Our sponsors are enjoying dinner wine this evening, provided by Knightsbridge Wine Shop through the generosity of John and Kim Taylor. And we thank Arlen Communications for producing this video presentation. Now we invite you to sit back, relax, and enjoy tonight's gala. Thank you again for watching and saluting our honorees. And thank you for supporting the Media Institute.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome. My name is Rick Kaplar, and I'm president of the Media Institute. It's my great pleasure to welcome you here tonight to our virtual Free Speech America Gala. This is our first virtual gala, so things are a little different, but I trust you'll enjoy the program we have in store for you as you watch from the comfort of your own home. First, I'd like to point out that we're coming to you from the conference facilities at the new National Association of Broadcasters building near Capitol Hill in Washington, D.C. We'd like to thank Senator Gordon Smith and all of our friends here at the NAB who have been so gracious, inviting us to use these beautiful surroundings as the backdrop for this evening's gala. For those of you who might not be familiar with us, the Media Institute is a nonprofit foundation that pursues three important goals: sound communications policy, a strong First Amendment, and excellence in journalism. Because of the pandemic these last 7 months, it's been a lot more challenging to pursue our goals, but we have adapted and we continue to forge ahead. In June, we converted our Communications Forum Luncheon Series to a virtual format. which allowed us to bring our sponsors first-rate speakers throughout the summer and into the fall. We strengthened our online presence in a number of other ways as well. Our Media and Communications Policy blog site has offered a very timely focus on current events, always mindful of the First Amendment and the critical role that it continues to play in these unsettled times. And in August, we launched an exciting new program called the Digital Media Center, which will be guided by our Media Institute Distinguished Fellow, Stuart Brotman. Next Monday, October 19th, marks the beginning of this year's Free Speech Week, the national celebration we coordinate. And this year's Free Speech Week will take place online and on social media to a much greater extent than ever before. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our Gala sponsors. The pandemic has made this an extremely challenging year for nonprofits, including the Media Institute. Many funding sources just dried up. So we're especially grateful to those of you supporting us financially tonight. You've given us a real vote of confidence, and we appreciate that more than we can tell you. I'd also like to thank the Knightsbridge Wine Shop in Northbrook, Illinois, and our board member, John Taylor, and his wife, Kim, for collaborating to provide the dinner wine that was delivered to our sponsors in the DC area tonight. Thank you for your generosity, John and Kim. Many thanks to Dave Arland and the team at Arland Communications for producing tonight's event. And of course, I'd like to recognize my colleague, Susanna Coto, for all the work she's done to make this evening possible. Tonight's Gala theme is A Voice for Everyone. We're very fortunate to have two distinguished awardees, David Cohen and Mignon Clyburn, who embody that spirit and have spent much of their careers working to promote diversity and inclusion through better access to broadband and telecom services for all Americans. We thank them, their presenters, Cesar, Conde, and Congressman G.K. Butterfield, and our featured speaker, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr, for being with us and making this a truly memorable evening. We're honored to have all of them with us tonight. And of course, we're honored to have our favorite Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Dick Wiley. Dick is a co-founder of Wiley Ryan LLP, a law firm with one of the largest communications practices in the United States. In the 1970s, he was a general counsel, a commissioner, and then chairman of the Federal Communications Commission. Since then, he has been one of Washington's most highly respected attorneys. And as I think you know, Dick serves as the Media Institute's chairman of the board. I'm grateful to Dick for his leadership and his support and for his incredible commitment to the Media Institute. And it's such a pleasure to work with him. Now it is my privilege to turn the program over to our great friend. Ladies and gentlemen, allow me to present the chairman of the board, Mr. Dick Wiley.
Well, Rick, thank you for those kind words, and good evening to one and all. It is now my pleasure to introduce our distinguished guest speaker, FCC Commissioner Brendan Carr. Now in his second year on the agency, he has been a leader in the FCC's efforts to develop 5G, a new generation of wireless services, and in particular, modernizing the infrastructure rules that govern the build-out of 5G across America. He has also led a special FCC initiative to improve the health care of our lower income and rural citizens. All of these efforts have taken him often on the road to observe how broadband connectivity is improving the lives of Americans and our national economy. Before joining the FCC as a member, he was the agency's general counsel, a legal assistant to then Commissioner Pai, and an attorney at a Washington law firm that I happen to know well. He is a graduate of Georgetown University and holds a law degree, magna cum laude, from Catholic University. And after graduation, he clerked on the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Commissioner Carr.
Well, thank you, Chairman Wiley, for that very kind introduction, and thank you to Rick and the entire Media Institute team for asking me to help honor your two awardees tonight. my former FCC colleague, former chairwoman Mignon Clyburn, and David Cohen. Over the last 6 months, I think we've all been somewhat accustomed to these virtual events. They're a chance to feel a little more normal, if just for 15 minutes at a time. We dust off our Zoom shirts, maybe find a jacket, and if you're lucky enough to have some hair on the top of your head, maybe run a comb through it before these events start. Needless to say, for my part, I got to skip that last step. And hopefully the video team here can insert a laugh track so that joke looks like it lands a little better than it probably will. But in all seriousness, it's a real special honor for me because I get to share this virtual stage with two former bosses. Some of you may recall that my legal career began in earnest at Wiley Rhine. I have memories, some fond memories even, of working long days and longer nights and even longer weekends still at the law firm as a young lawyer. But joking aside, I can say without hesitation that Chairman Wiley's insights, his mentorship, his friendship, his guidance were all invaluable to me as my career developed, and I'm sure there are countless other peoples in telecom that can relate and share the guidance that they've received from Chairman Wiley. I also had the privilege to serve in 2013 under then Chairwoman Mignon Clyburn, when I worked actually as a staff attorney in the FCC's Office of General Counsel. As both FCC chair and as a commissioner, Mignon worked tirelessly to advance the FCC's core mission of ensuring every American has access to world-leading communication services, whether that's high-speed internet connectivity or a competitive and diverse media landscape. And not to be overlooked, tonight's second honoree, David Cohen, is being recognized for his work in the private sector to extend the internet's reach to millions of Americans. David spearheaded, of course, Comcast's Internet Essentials program, and that program alone delivered internet connectivity to more than 8 million low-income Americans since 2011. That is a really important and valuable achievement, so I'm glad he's getting recognition for that today. And when I reflect on tonight's awardees and on their individual accomplishments, I think about how far we have come as a country in terms of building out high-speed internet connections and why that work is so important. So much of the conversation these days, whether it's current events or sports or politics, is happening on the internet. If you can't connect, you can't contribute. But as we've seen during COVID-19, connectivity means so much more than even that type of activity. As stay-at-home orders washed across the country, our daily routines, driving our kids to school, going into an office, even catching up with friends, were upended overnight. Staying at home prompted us to recreate those routines online in an instant. That sudden, massive transition made our internet connections more important than ever before. And it also added additional urgency to efforts to ensure that everyone in this country is connected. So I'd like to focus on one area in particular where I believe the FCC's efforts have met the moment and made a real difference in the lives of countless Americans, and that's telehealth. And I think it's particularly fitting to discuss telehealth at an event honoring Commissioner Clyburn because she achieved so much in her time at the agency to promote telehealth. She's long been a believer in the potential of this technology, and in fact, in 2014, at her urging, the FCC launched the Connect to Health Task Force. And that task force has played an invaluable role in focusing the FCC on the work it can do to promote telehealth access. We're continuing to build on that telehealth work that Commissioner Clyburn pioneered. Indeed, for years now, the FCC has played a key role in extending the build-out of internet connections to brick-and-mortar healthcare facilities. But we're now seeing a new trend. The delivery of high-tech, high-quality care isn't limited to the confines of a physical hospital or healthcare facility anymore. With remote patient monitoring and mobile health applications that can be accessed right on a smartphone, we now have the technology to deliver high-quality care directly to patients wherever they are. And you can think of this as the healthcare equivalent of shifting from Blockbuster Video to Netflix. My first experience with this new technology came a few years ago. I was in Mississippi at the University of Mississippi Medical Center. That's when the professionals there explained to me how they launched a pilot program in the Mississippi Delta to deliver care to patients with diabetes. The program showed great results from patients improving their healthcare conditions, significant cost savings to the healthcare system itself. So we started the process then of standing up a new FCC initiative to support connected care. Now back then we had no idea how important it would become to provide care at a distance. But because of the legwork we put in from Chairwoman Clyburn's time forward, the FCC was able to stand up an emergency COVID-19 connected care program in a matter of days from Congress and the President giving us the authority and the funding to take that step. And that program has made a big impact in a short period of time. All told, the FCC approved $200 million in funding for 539 healthcare providers. And I've had a chance to visit with many of these providers from Nevada to Michigan to Ohio that are putting that money to use. And I've seen firsthand how it's making a life-changing and in some ways a life-saving impact. Of course, years before my own visit to the Mississippi Delta, Commissioner Clyburn spent time in that same small town that I visited, Ruleville, and she recognized the potential impact for these types of telehealth programs. At the time, she said connectivity is critical to healthcare, and she was absolutely right. Her tireless efforts to connect those most in need are a big reason why we're honoring her tonight. Now, as Americans ramped up their use of the internet for telehealth and many other applications, traffic on our communications infrastructure spiked. I'm proud to report that throughout this surge in traffic, which saw increases of 20 to 30% almost overnight, America's networks fared exceptionally well. While our networks delivered high quality service despite elevated traffic levels, our friends in other advanced economies weren't so fortunate. Their networks strained to maintain quality and speed. Yet our network showed no significant reduction in speed or latency. In fact, US wireless networks actually performed better, saw faster speeds through the pandemic. America's networks performed because of the private sector's massive investment in our internet infrastructure. For example, in 2019, telecom crews built out more miles of high-speed fiber than ever before. Our wireless industry invested almost $30 billion in their networks, which is a 4-year high, and placed us #1 in the world in terms of investment. And all of that accelerated builds are going to be continuing. And this benefits all Americans, whether we are in a pandemic or not. The investment in networks and their performance under stress doesn't happen by chance, however. It's been fostered by a light-touch regulatory approach that we've pursued at the FCC. At the Commission, we've taken several concrete steps to modernize our infrastructure rules and make sure that the private sector can invest. We've updated federal historic and environmental rules. We put common sense guardrails in place on state and local decision making. We've made it easier to build out infrastructure during COVID-19 for emergency processes by streamlining, again, some historic environmental rules that have been getting in the way. We've made it easier to upgrade towers to 5G. The FCC's work to modernize our infrastructure rules enabled the private sector to make America home to the strongest 5G platform in the world. 5G is live today, not just in places like New York or San Francisco where you might expect it, but in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, in Defiance County, Ohio. I think those are much better measures of the progress that we're making, and I look forward to building on that. While wireless towers are being upgraded across the country to 5G, there's another great wave of upgrades happening on broadcast towers and across the media landscape. It's an upgrade to what's called ATSC 3.0. It's a new standard that allows broadcasters to do more with their signals by transmitting an internet protocol or IP. Much of the attention on 3.0 has focused rightly on how it will transform broadcast television, including transmitting Ultra HD and allowing content to be personalized to a household. But focusing solely on the television application, I think misses the technology's full potential. By transmitting data as IP and remembering that broadcast channels are spectrum, we can reconceptualize how we think about this technology. The technology looks less strictly like a better broadcast TV experience and looks more like a broadcast internet. Every broadcast channel using this standard has enough spectrum to provide about 25 megabit per second downstream, which qualifies for broadband under the FCC's definition. So what can we do with this new broadcast internet pipe? For telemedicine, IoT, smart ag, broadcast internet's broad coverage could push data out over a large area. For autonomous vehicles, the service could result in targeted fleet-wide updates to mapping and other data that's needed for autonomous cars to operate safely. And for families, it could be another option for in-home or on-the-go high-speed downloads. So given all of its potential, I was pleased that the Commission unanimously approved an order over the summer to ensure that broadcast internet services can continue to develop without being weighed down by legacy regulations intended for an entirely different industry and technology. Our decision makes clear that broadcasters and other innovators can offer broadcast internet services nationwide without triggering the FCC's TV ownership rules. And that's a type of certainty that should encourage investment in development of this technology. Finally, I want to take the opportunity to address a critical impediment to the Media Institute's goals of encouraging competition in the media marketplace and protecting the excellence in journalism that we see: the FCC's media ownership regulations. If you'd like to see these regulations in action, I'd invite you to visit a small town, Powell, Wyoming. That's where I stopped by a local radio station, only to find its doors locked. After we were able to finally rouse someone to join us at the station and open the doors, I got a look inside at their operations. And it was effectively a Dell laptop playing music pumped in from some big city somewhere else. Now, a couple miles away, there's a local broadcast company that is connected to their community, investing in local content and the type of local news and entertainment programming that is attuned to the needs of their community. This company wanted to invest in the Powell station and bring the same type of live and original programming to that community that they're already delivering to one just a few miles away. But they can't. And they can't, not because they lack capital, not because they lack a willing seller, but because the FCC's rules won't let them. Our ownership rules, which are supposed to promote competition, a diversity of viewpoints, localism, are keeping that laptop powered up while preventing an actual investment in local news gathering and investment in the jobs that investment would enable. This doesn't make much sense to me. In a diverse and growing media marketplace, we need to do everything we can to promote investment in local content. Instead, our rules often frustrate these efforts. Sadly, our latest attempt to modernize these ownership rules has been stalled once again in the courts. But it would be a mistake to underestimate the need for common sense reforms to help promote competition and increase access to the local news and information that is so vital, yet is too often out of reach in a lot of rural and other smaller communities. So with that, I want to again say thank you to Rick, thank you to Media Institute, Chairman Wiley, for inviting me to speak tonight. Congratulations again to the two awardees tonight, Mignon Clyburn and David Cohen. Thank you for all that you have accomplished, and thank you to the Media Institute for your work. Thanks.
We come now to the honors portion of our evening program. And to present our American Horizon Award recipient, it is my pleasure to introduce Cesar Conde, the chairman of NBC Universal. In that important position, he has oversight for NBC News, MSNBC, and CNBC. Previously, Mr. Conde was chairman of NBC Universal's International Group and Telemundo Enterprises. And under his leadership, Telemundo became the #1 Spanish language network for the first time. Before joining NBC Universal in 2013, our guest was president of Univision Networks. He is a graduate of Harvard College and has an MBA from Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you Cesar Conde.
Hello, everyone. It's my honor to present David Cohen with the American Horizon Award. I would like to thank the Media Institute for their continued support in protecting and promoting journalism. The values you stand for are at the core of the daily work that we do. It is fitting that tonight's event is entitled A Voice for Everyone, as David has made providing access to free speech and communication priorities throughout his career. I have had the privilege of knowing David for over 10 years, and during that time, I have seen firsthand the commitment and the passion that he has for serving the most needy in our communities. 9 years ago, David created Internet Essentials, a program dedicated to making sure everyone has access to the internet, regardless of income. Since its creation, Internet Essentials has been the largest internet adoption program in the U.S., connecting more than 8 million low-income Americans with low-cost, high-speed internet. The program also offers free training and computers. In addition to the creation of Internet Essentials, David paved the way as Comcast's first Chief Diversity Officer, where he oversaw the creation of the Joint External Diversity Advisory Council, which guides the senior executive teams at Comcast and NBCUniversal. He has also championed Comcast Cares efforts across the country. Just this year, Comcast NBCUniversal was recognized 7th among the 50 companies that Cares list from People magazine. It was David who gave and inspired others to give to organizations like the United Way. And it was David's words that led many of our annual values reports, which supported and showcased our corporate diversity efforts. He's been a driving force behind our mission to build a diverse, equitable, and inclusive company, a priority that we uphold at the NBCUniversal News Group. In July, we announced the News Group's 50% Challenge Initiative, an industry-leading program with 2 specific aspirations: that 50% of the news organization employees be women and 50% of the total workforce be people of color. I've been fortunate to work with David multiple times in the past, including at national conferences like the National Council of La Raza, or when he hosted the groundbreaking for Telemundo's new global headquarters. On a personal note, David's been a mentor and someone who has helped so many people throughout the years. He is a man of action and a man of principle, and I'm proud to call him a friend. We sincerely appreciate what he has done for our company, and it is my great pleasure to introduce David Cohen and present him with the American Horizon Award.
Thank you for your kind words, Cesar, and my thanks and appreciation to the Media Institute for honoring me with the American Horizon Award. Although I wish we could all be together in person, I stand before you as a virtual honoree and feel very humbled. This recognition is made all the more special knowing that past recipients include the late Ralph Roberts, the much admired founder of Comcast, who I was fortunate to know as a friend, a mentor, and a leader. I'm also honored to be in the company of Cathy Hughes, founder of Urban One, and a foundational media leader and inspiration to me personally, and Decker Anstrom, former president and CEO of the Weather Channel and former president of NCTA, as well as a former Comcast director and one of my mentors and role models in the industry. In the 40 years since the Media Institute began, I don't think this annual Free Speech America Gala has ever been held in a national environment quite like the one we're in today. Basic principles of free speech are being challenged in multiple ways and by multiple forces, by foreign governments distorting the truth through social media, and by wildly disparate views of the news by varying outlets. Divisiveness and contention are at an all-time high in our politics and our national discourse. Now, you might say that this was predictable. After all, incivility and intolerance have been on the rise for at least 20 years, especially in our national politics, as we stand only 3 weeks away from the 2020 presidential election. Beyond politics, we're also feeling the effects of 2 viruses that weren't even on the national radar screen when the year began. There's the coronavirus, the likes of which we haven't seen in 100 years, with over 200,000 American lives lost due to this pandemic. And there's the virus of racial inequity, which has been with us for over 400 years. But it's been brought into sharp focus in 2020, opening the door for a difficult but deeply needed national conversation. A lot of that conversation so far has come in the form of public protest. Most of that protest has been in keeping with what the First Amendment calls the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. But what we've seen in some cities is anathema to free speech. It reminds me of the classic law school hypothetical about yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. That's not protected speech, nor is unlawful destruction of property in the guise of protest. And I'm sure the peaceful majority of protesters feel the same way. Of course, while racial equity is a compelling issue, it's far from the only one that feeds passionate disagreements. But all the divisiveness in our society sends one very clear message to me personally and to Comcast NBC Universal. Preserving the First Amendment and the responsible exercise of freedom of speech has never been more important. At Comcast NBC Universal, we think of ourselves as a First Amendment company. Virtually everything we do is rooted in First Amendment values, especially the value reflected in the theme of tonight's event, a voice for everyone. For our company, those values are reflected in the way we cover the news, in our efforts to build a society where all people feel empowered to share their thoughts and opinions, and in our desire to make our company a place where our commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion assures a diverse set of voices guiding us into the future. Of course, the journalists in our news division are the frontline players in the free speech arena. They practice and preserve the principle of free speech 24 hours a day. And every day, they navigate a minefield of sensitivities to offer a balanced and accurate picture. It's not easy. By introducing our audiences to people with different views, the news people are extending our free speech franchise. But what good is freedom of speech if you don't have access to the multiplicity of voices or a voice to speak with? And in today's tech-driven world, people without high-speed internet connections are left essentially voiceless. They don't have the digital tools or literacy needed to hear the diversity of voices expressing opinions or even to express themselves in today's modern world. Contending with life in America without benefit of the internet is guaranteed marginalization. You not only lack a voice, but you also lack access to education, employment, and social services that most people take for granted. Yet, hard as it is to believe, today in America, the world's richest and most technologically advanced nation, millions of people still live on the wrong side of the digital divide. The unfairness and pain of this has been laid bare by the coronavirus pandemic. At a time when the pandemic is forcing many schools into online learning, 17 million American children live in households without high-speed internet connections. And the families lacking these connections are overwhelmingly low-income people of color. This only exacerbates America's problem with galloping inequality. The inequity of the digital divide is what drove Comcast to launch Internet Essentials, our leading internet adoption program for low-income families that Cesar mentioned earlier. We were frankly outraged by the unfairness of disparate access to the internet in America, and we felt a responsibility to take action. In the years since then, we have worked with local nonprofit partners across the country to provide more than 8 million low-income people with high-speed internet service in their homes. Equally important is the digital literacy training we initiated to help make them more knowledgeable and responsible internet users. But obviously, as the pandemic has exposed, there remain too many families left without a digital voice. We have taken steps to expand internet access targeted to families who do not have access to remote learning opportunities being offered by their schools. And we look forward to working with the rest of the industry and government at all levels to continue to meet this critical need. In the interest of assuring a voice for all Americans, we're also an enthusiastic participant in encouraging a full count for the 2020 census and full voter participation in the 2020 election. Of course, as a First Amendment company, we'll continue to encourage free speech in every way we can, consistent with the Media Institute's mission and values. Because, as Martin Luther King Jr. warned many years ago, our lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter. Thank you all very much and have a great evening.
To present our First Amendment Award winner, we are privileged to have with us Congressman G.K. Butterfield, representing North Carolina's 1st District in the United States House of Representatives. First elected in 2004 after a lengthy career as a practicing attorney and also a Supreme Court and Superior Court judge in North Carolina, Mr. Butterfield is a member of the Democratic leadership on Capitol Hill as Chief Deputy Whip, and he was a former chairman of the Congressional Black Caucus. Our guest is a member of the influential House Energy and Commerce Committee and its subcommittees on communications, energy, and health. Mr. Congressman, you honor us with your presence this evening, and thanks for helping us to recognize a very good friend of so many in this audience. Ladies and gentlemen, Congressman G.K. Butterfield.
I can't think of a higher honor than for me to introduce one of the recipients of the Media Institute Freedom of Speech Award. Let me also recognize and salute the other recipients this evening. Mignon Clyburn is a friend, a close family friend. The Mignon story begins deep in the institution of slavery rooted in the low country of South Carolina. Mrs. Emily England Clyburn, Mignon's mother, was a South Carolina legend. She was the product of the historic England family of Moncks Corner, South Carolina, who themselves were descendants of South Carolina slaves. Congressman James Enos Clyburn, Mignon's father, is the product of the historic Clyburn family of Sumter, South Carolina, who were also descendants of South Carolina slaves. Jim and Emily Clyburn, and unfortunately, Emily passed away last year, but Jim and Emily married very soon after college, and they produced 3 wonderful daughters. Mignon is the eldest. The Clyburn family is one of the most closely knit families that I have ever met. You know, they love each other and they love humanity. Mignon Clyburn was born in 1962 during the height of the civil rights movement to which her parents were intricately involved. Mignon graduated from W.J. Keenan High School in 1980. She earned a B.S. degree in banking, finance, and economics from the University of South Carolina in 1984. From 84 to 98, Mrs. Clyburn served as publisher, editor, and general manager of the Charleston, South Carolina-based The Coastal Times, which was a weekly African-American newspaper. From 1998 to 2009, Mignon Clyburn was a member of the South Carolina Public Service Commission, representing South Carolina's 6th Congressional District. She was first elected to this post in July of 1988 and served as chairman of the commission from July 2002 to July of 2004, 2 continuous years. In April of 2009, President Barack Obama, who convincingly won his primary in South Carolina, incidentally, President Barack Obama nominated Mignon Clyburn, to a vacant seat. It was a Democratic seat on the Federal Communications Commission. She initially was appointed to serve the unexpired term of a former FCC member who had left the commission. In July 2009, Mignon Clyburn was confirmed. She was confirmed to a full 5-year term by the United States Senate, and the vote in the Senate was unanimous. Mignon Clyburn began a second 5-year term on the FCC in January of 2013 after the re-election of President Obama. She was nominated by President Obama and again confirmed by the Senate. In May 2013, President Obama designated Mignon Clyburn as acting chairwoman for the Federal Communications Commission, a position she held until her successor was sworn into office. Currently, Mignon Clyburn is principal at MLC Strategies, which is a DC-based firm. She also serves on the board of directors for Lionsgate, a well-respected media production company. And so let me just say thank you for recognizing my friend, the Honorable Mignon Clyburn, and congratulations to the other recipients this year. Thank you.
Good evening. I would like to thank the CEO, the Board of Trustees, the Selection Committee, and anyone else responsible for bestowing such an incredible award to me. The Freedom of Speech Award. I was so moved and uplifted when I got the call that I was a nominee. And to pair me with David Cohen, who is receiving the American Horizon Award, I am not sure if that was divine providence or by design by all of you. It is significant and noteworthy that you pair a former commissioner with a former high-ranking media mogul. And yes, I did call him a mogul. And it's significant to me because it reaffirms that in order to realize our goals and objectives when it comes to connecting communities, when it comes to empowering voices, when it comes to really giving individuals the tools they need to thrive and to express themselves, you need regulators and you need industry. This incredible public-private partnership that the universal service and other constructs by the American government has enabled makes us the envy of the world. But it also makes us work harder to achieve those objectives. When we set out to serve communities, when we set out to be responsible for our constituents and for those we serve, we don't really have this perfect vision, or we're not necessarily the most sage when it comes to what will be successful. But in a collaborative, in an open, in a free market and free expression framework, this allows us to every day work for a better and more inclusive tomorrow. When I saw some of you back in 2017, we were seated in the beautiful St. Regis Hotel. And I was talking about how significant that year was when it comes to radio and other platforms. I talked about our challenges and opportunities when it comes to providing service from a regulator point of view. I talked about how much the landscape has changed, how much the challenges and the products and services that are abound, that we have options that a 10-year-old me would never dream of. But I also affirmed what you know is that our obligations remain the same. We need, we want, and we desire a competitive media landscape and a communications industries that allows all of us to participate and to thrive. But we also, particularly those regulators, particularly those of us in government, or those of us who used to be in government and sometimes forget that we're no longer in government, that we have to uphold the public interest. We must promote competition, localism, and diversity. Those principles, those goals, they remain. So while I am hopeful, while I remain steadfast, I also recognize that today's challenges bring about more opportunities. It will not be the same. It will be difficult, particularly as we move through dealing with and enabling opportunities through a pandemic. But with your goals and objectives intact, with regulatory agencies like the FCC maintaining its North Star, I am more hopeful than ever before that the tools and the opportunities that each of us need to be successful, to be expressive, to communicate, and to embrace our First Amendment principles will remain. So I thank you once again for this high honor and opportunity. I do not take it lightly. I am moved and especially thrilled to be among the honorees tonight. And I will commit to you that whatever title I have before, after, or between my name, that those principles, those goals and objectives, and that First Amendment freedom that we do not and should never take for granted will remain constant in my view and in my spirit. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us virtually for this evening. And thanks once again to our leaders and our presenters and, of course, our award winners. Good night.